3rd through 6th, 2026. I'm also the Executive Director of the Rocky Mountain Humanistic Counseling and Psychological Association, which is the host of the Fourth World Congress. I've had the privilege of being able to attend the first 3 World Congresses, which each have been wonderful events with well over 500 people attending each of these. These have been times to come together, to learn from each other, to dialogue about our differences, and to build a strong existential community. Right now, the world really needs the voice of existential psychology. Through coming together as a community, we strengthen our voice, we strengthen our message, and we strengthen our impact. We're going to have some pre-conference and post-conference events, both workshops as well as social events, including an opportunity to visit the International Archives of Existential and Humanistic Psychology that's located in Colorado Springs. We hope that we will see many of you at the Congress, and we hope that you will follow us on social media and check in on our website for updates on the World Congress. You can also sign up to receive updates on the World Congress through our website at www.wcet4.com. That's WCET and the number 4.com. We look forward to seeing you in Colorado in 2026. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nathaniel Granger Jr., one of the co-chairs of the World Congress of Existential Therapy. I am excited about this World Congress, and I have attended many. Our theme, community, authenticity, and the mystery of being, speaks for itself. Please join us at the World Congress of Existential Therapy. I look forward to seeing you there.
Hello, I'm Dr. Lewis Hoffman, one of the co-chairs of the 4th World Congress of Existential Therapy to be held in Denver, Colorado in the United States, June 3rd through 6th, 2026. I'm also the Executive Director of the Rocky Mountain Humanistic Counseling and Psychological Association, which is the host of the 4th World Congress. I've had the privilege of being able to attend the first 3 World Congresses, which each have been wonderful events with well over 500 people attending each of these. These have been times to come together, to learn from each other, to dialogue about our differences, and to build a strong existential community. Right now, the world really needs the voice of existential psychology. Through coming together as a community, we strengthen our voice, we strengthen our message, and we strengthen our impact. We're going to have some pre-conference
Hello. I realize I'm Eric Craig. Well, I have something to. So I know you've got a conference book, but I'm going to ask some personal questions of you. And I brought a bunch of notebooks from the United States. So if you would like one, you can come up and grab one right here. Whoever would like one. There's about 40 of them. So there's not enough, but there's still plenty for folks. Yeah, just raise your hand if you need one.
Can I hear also Alexi
Katerina,
Bolshan?
Evgeny, and me.
Bolshanin?
Can I?
Yes, okay.
Just one
On the,
Yes.
please, it's possible to on the.
Hand them out. Yeah,
Alexis,
hand
is
them
it
out to
possible
people.
on the table? Okay. Uh, and Claire Arnold Baker. Oh,
We need one.
if please you. Yeah, here. There is the step here.
Thank you, sir.
There are three of you? I saw her. Well, here.
Vado? Sì, adesso io lo do. Sì, certo. Okay. Good morning. Thank you very much to be here in Rome. I have to present Eric Craig. That is so important. I think that is not very important to present Craig because it's so important, no problem. But he's an existential psychologist and independent scholar. You worked with Medar Boss, yes, and Paul Stern also, Paul Stern, and a lot of publication, a lot of books and so on. And it is expert also of dreaming interpretation, yes? Oh, okay, well, yeah, it's possible to better if. Oh, Oop.
Maybe I'll start up here, but you're so far away. And speaking of the title of this workshop, it's about presence. And this does not help with presence, so I may be jumping down pretty soon. Hello, Emmy. It's so nice to see so many of you that I've gotten to know over the years, and many new people as well. I'm coming fairly empty with this. The workshop title is The Wisdom of Emptiness, The Mysterious Conundrums of Human Presence. It's in the unique relational situation of psychotherapy. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to just talk for maybe 10 minutes, and then Alexi will respond for, I think, Gianfranco said 3 or 4 minutes. Alexi will talk for 3 or 4 minutes, and then we will do some work together. And this, I'll read these things to you just to give a sense of what I'm hoping to address and consider with you. The wisdom of emptiness, the mysterious conundrums of human presence. Let me just say a little bit about that. Emptiness. Freud recommended that we come with evenly hovering attention, that we be abstinent, that we be anonymous, that we'd be neutral. None of which he did. None of which. He has many cases, most of the cases, even Medard Boss, my friend Medard Boss, was in a session and he didn't have enough money to pay for his therapy and his food. And so, because his father wouldn't help him with such a nonsense. And so he would be free associating, and in the middle of the lying on the couch, suddenly there would be these noises. His stomach was growling. And Freud noticed this and would sometimes go to the door and meet him and drop some shillings in his pocket. But this is just one example of the many ways that Freud correctly said, I am Freud, but I am not Freudian. So, And then not only he recommended this, but if you look at the East and the idea of emptiness, or Boss's idea of openness, all of these come, and Bion talks about entering every session without memory or desire. And yet, we are human beings. This is not possible to empty ourselves as ourselves. In fact, there are a number of books that talk about self as an instrument in psychotherapy. So how are we to deal with this inherent conundrum? So the unique relational situation of psychotherapy calls upon us as therapists to remain open, truthfully attentive, and responsive to whatever emerges in the co-created world of the therapeutic encounter. What does this mean for those of us who have given our lives to understanding and serving those who come to us for a new experience of being, a new relationship, a new understanding of themselves and the world? Though we are guided by countless recommendations, some of which I've just mentioned to you, when we step into the therapeutic relationship, this is striking. None of that exists. None of the theory exists. None of what we learned is paramount. We are in a relationship just as we are in a relationship right now. And something is unfolding in me and in you, in each of you, in this very moment. Now, unfortunately, we're not able to speak individually, but I know that there is this co-created encounter going on. I look at your faces and I see so many different kinds of expressions. And I have no idea of knowing that, what those mean to you, and especially since I don't know you. So this is, in a way, psychotherapy itself is an unprecedented living encounter, living moment with a virtual stranger. We must each find our own distinctive ways. Each, the other person and myself, must find our own distinctive ways of being with one another. Two human existences setting out together through an unpathed, unnamed forest. And to some extent, we've got names for all the paths and forests we are going to be experiencing this weekend. But when we're in those living moments, it is unknown. It is completely mysterious what will unfold. There's a popular song that says, by Enya, I'm not a fan of Oliver music, but this, only time knows, only time knows. So one of the things that I wanted you to do is to write down just a little bit in your notebooks, whether the conference notebook or the one you picked up from me, just what you think, what wisdom is. Just write a little note on what you think wisdom is. And we'll see how that changes over the time of our workshop. And then the second part of the title is The Mysterious Conundrum of Human Presence. So what is presence? I'll give you a minute just to write those things down. I had a dream last week preparing for this workshop. And I was in an audience with all psychoanalysts. It was a massive audience. There are hundreds of psychoanalysts. And I was presenting a case. And the moderator for this big meeting was saying, well, we'll find out what you see. We'll find out what you see. And I heard it in a moment of, oh, I'm an existentialist. I'm not particularly welcome among psychoanalysts. There's so many different metaphysical differences, even if not many technical differences. And I wondered to myself, well, what will they see? And so by seeing, I mean, how can we be sure that what I am feeling, how can we be sure that what we know, what we feel, what we are seeing, what we are understanding is faithful to the other? How can I, as the wisdom of the East says, purify my mind? Especially when Auden wrote, the desires of the heart are as crooked as corkscrews. So that's the second part of the question that I'm raising here. So the first is, the ideals that we've been given are really ideals. That's not what happens in the situation. They guide us, but they don't control us. They guide us, but they don't control us, and they're in the background. We're not thinking in concepts, whether they're existential constructs or psychoanalytic constructs. I once understood psychotherapy as a radically selfless activity. But now I find such selflessness unrealistic. Radically attentive presence is the most I can hope for. And even that is fraught with uncertainty. How then can I be fully present in this relationship, which demands that I be with and for the other, while the other is also present with me, but with and for themselves? And how do I so often suspect that I am ultimately the one who is rewarded more deeply by these encounters than the other? Freud said we had only two rights as therapists. One is to be paid for the time we are given. He was leasing the hour, not wisdom, not love, not anything else. He was leasing the hour. That's the one right you have, to get paid for that. The second right you have, and of course you do pro bono work, and that's the second thing that you have a right to, which is to feel grateful and maybe proud's a strong word, but really happy with the fact that you have chosen to give your life to this kind of activity. One thing that very much influenced my thinking on this is reading a book recently by Karen Marotta. She's a relational psychoanalyst. And she gives very detailed case studies about ways in which her own needs as a human being and her own longings as a human being and her own traumas, developmental traumas as a human being, shape and, the word that came to my mind was shape and shatter the purity of the presence. So I'll leave those. These are the questions that I have, and I hope you give, my main hope in doing this is that you give these two questions some thought. How do you deal with the fact that we're not gods, we're mortals? And how do you deal with the fact that you come to psychotherapy with your own wounds, your own longings and desires. Whether you try to suspend them or not, which we are encouraged to do by Husserl and Heidegger, Husserl would recommend that we let the things, the other, speak for themselves. Heidegger would recommend that we let the other show themselves, the others show themselves from themselves in the very way in which they show themselves from themselves. But as Agnes Nin said, we do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. So these are the conundrums that I'm leaving you with. And once we hear from Alexei, which I'm very glad to meet you. Very glad to meet you, Alexei.
Okay.
Very glad. Yeah, we better start.
Hello, dear colleagues. I don't speak English. My help. Прошу помощи у моего
Yes,
коллеги
I will be assisted by my colleague,
Владислав Бородулин.
Vladislav Baradulin.
Он поможет мне в моем сообщении.
He will help with my short presentation.
Я очень рад вас всех приветствовать и благодарен за возможность это сделать сразу после Эрика Крейга.
I'm very happy to meet you all and to welcome you, and I'm very happy to do it after Craig's speech. Okay. So basically, it's what I would like to add to this is the topic of to add on to this maybe a different one: existential bankruptcy. Based on my counseling experience and stories of my clients, I offer for your consideration a new type of existence, existential bankruptcy. Unlike Sartre's emptiness, bankruptcy is not an existential entity. It's a dynamic process with its psychological and existential preconditions and its own beginning and favorable conditions for the formation, consolidation, and development. Unlike existential vacuum, life can be existentially bankrupt at any age. Bankrupt, empty as well. It's a different perspective, emptiness. That's what we talk about. Moreover, in modern circumstances, the human life becomes empty as a result of not being fulfilled with interests, purposes, values, so on, from the early childhood. As an example, I'll give you 3 preconditions which can lead to this devastation of life for the modern man. First, in our modern society, there's a global substitution or replacement of fundamental values with with superficial values, with consumer-oriented values. That's based on the request of my clients, which confirms seriousness of the problem. The evolving situation reminds me of the British fairy tale, The 3 Little Pigs. When Nif-Nif built himself a house of straw and decided that he will make it perfectly through the winter, which will protect him from frosts, bitter cold winters, and hungry wolves, and similar to us, because we're relying on propagated consumer values, which are very popular today, and don't endeavor to live a full life. But when we face more or less serious challenges, such as failure, crisis, loss, we're stunned to discover that these amazing values are completely useless for dealing with real-life conflicts and overcoming the emerged difficulties. And then we're read at breakneck speed to Naf-Naf, who is an elder brother psychotherapist and who built a house of stone, and ask him for protection from the evil wolf who effortlessly destroyed our ephemeral straw shelter. Second, we come to live in an era of simulacra. we are breaking away from reality further and further away, tangling in the unviable foundations of life. What is truth? What is a lie? What is wrong? What is right? How to comprehend what is right and what is wrong? How can we depend upon something when we're facing challenges of life? And finally, third, in our fast-moving age of information, the freedom and mobility have become the core values of a successful person. Now we're free and empty, basically, from everything, from family, from home, motherland, traditions, and from all the cultural and historical heritage of our ancestors. The absolute, so to speak, rootlessness of the modern man is evident. So, like a rolling stone that gathers no moth, we indeed cannot find something we can hold on to, which is also a manifestation of emptiness, a different kind of emptiness, as you talked about. However, this bankruptcy, I call it existential bankruptcy, above all, is an existential problem of a person. It should not be justified by either psychological or social or health factors. Moreover, we should not be blaming these factors by themselves. But existential bankruptcy is not a lifelong sentence. It is a reversible process. Because it was formed and developed under certain conditions and prerequisites, it can be modified, it can be eliminated, which will allow us to start the reverse process of filling our life with something. So that's basically the take that comes from Alexei.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. Thank you so much. You've brought in some larger perspectives. You've brought in the cultural perspective. You brought in the perspective of technology. I was interested in your concept of bankruptcy because we always have resources. We can, maybe we can declare a momentary bankruptcy. We can say to ourselves, my life is bankrupt right now, but I don't have to leave it that way. I'm thinking of Heidegger's Gelassenheit. Heidegger says Gelassenheit is mirthful serenity. Things are the way they are for me and for the world, but I'm not going to let those things determine how I live my life. That's Gelassenheit. It's a yes and a no at the same time. And thank you for
Which Heidegger's word you said?
Gelassenheit. Yeah. It's letting go. The gathering, I would translate it, the gathering of letting be-ness. So thank you for that widened perspective, Alexei. We're at 12. We've only got 15 minutes here now. So what I'd like you to do is to just speak. I've asked you to raise these two questions for yourself. What do you do with the fact that you're a mortal human being, that these ideals that we are taught, no matter what the model, and Yaki wrote this wonderful book that criticizing and showing the limitations of all the models that we have, supporting the notion of a more existential phenomenological approach. So I just want to say one thing about emptiness before we go on, and that is emptiness is a potentiated space. It's a potentiated time. this space is between here is empty. So anything can happen with this. Emptiness is not nothing. It is an openness to possibilities and an openness to being. So if you could just pick one person and then to just share a little bit about your thoughts about those two conundrums of human presence. With that one person, I'll give you 5 minutes or so to share with each of you, and then we'll come back, and whoever would like to share with the rest of us can do that. So, go for it. If there's somebody you want to talk to in specific, you can get up and go and say, hey, I want to talk with you about this. So. It was what?
I suggest only one topic. I ask myself always, what kind of evolution was the evolution from Australopithecus to man that created noesis? When was created noesis? It's very difficult because this is the important passage. And if we, in future, discover this passage, maybe we have another idea of consciousness and knowledge.
Interesting. And were you inspired by noise because the sudden chatter?
I answer all. I question only. I don't answer.
Well, make some noise again then. Great, thank you. Please go back to your conversation.
Posso dire due parole?
I'm sorry?
Posso dire due parole?
I don't.
Vorrei dire due parole su questo. Lei ha parlato di enigma.
Oh, enigma, yes.
Io
Yes,
penso che
Good word.
più di enigma bisogna usare il termine mistero,
Yeah,
perché l'uomo è mistero,
yeah.
non è un enigma. L'enigma si deve risolvere. Il mistero
question to all, because there is the translation in English.
Oh, because of the English. Okay. Yeah, but
ho detto una
Let's-
cosa che mi è venuta in mente.
let's let them to finish,
Ah.
and I'll just and then we'll.
Okay. Organize you the quest, okay?
Okay. Okay, 2 more minutes. Hi. Hi. Okay, try to wrap it up now. Let's try to wrap it up because we've got another workshop. Okay, come on back. Hello. Hello, time to be. Shut it down. Time to shut it down. I love the noise. I'm sorry you can have it disappear. So you can continue with this. Kirk is still being massively present to this person there. And Paulo has something that he wants to say. So we're just learning what Gianfranco's idea about a dialogical conference instead of a bunch of talking heads, what that means. And so we're on an experiment as a conference as far as I'm concerned. And Paulo came up and he said he had something he would like to share.
Buongiorno. Allora, mi ha toccato la parola saggezza. Io ho scritto nel mio quadernetto che la parola saggezza implicava lui ha parlato di enigma. Secondo me bisogna parlare di mistero, perché l'enigma tendenzialmente è qualcosa che, come le parole crociate, bisogna risolvere, come un dramma poliziesco, qualcosa del genere. Secondo me invece la parola da usare per quanto riguarda l'essere umano è mistero, perché dobbiamo, secondo me, chiederci perché c'è qualcosa anziché il nulla. Noi ci siamo e siamo qualcosa. E allora questo esserci, secondo me, è un mistero che non si risolverà mai. Lo si accetta per quello che è. L'uomo è misterioso di per sé, perché la vita è un po' misteriosa. Ecco, questo volevo dire, più che enigma che porta in sé l'idea di qualcosa che va ricercato. Certamente dobbiamo tutti quanti cercare, però evidentemente, secondo il mio parere, la parola più giusta è mistero. Noi rimaniamo qualcosa di insoluto e insolubile se non ci affidiamo a qualche altra cosa. Questa è la mia idea. Grazie.
Grazie. I'll learn what it says. I'll talk to the translator. Thank you so much for your contribution. He used the word enigma and mystery, and those are two wonderful things. So I wanted to hear if there's just a couple people that want to say very briefly before we end what you came to with your interrogations, your questioning. That's okay. But silence is also, by the way, silence is also a kind of emptiness. It leaves possibilities. So there's a couple of thoughts that I had was, much of this is built on the notion of doubt. You know, we know the famous phrase from René Descartes, dubito, cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But we leave the most important thing out, because in those meditations, the whole meditation is built on doubt. It is a doubt. It's a method of doubt, and he says it over and over again, and his own doubts. And so this is so you could say it should be dubito, ergo cogito, ergo sum. And I would even put in another Latin word in there, which is I doubt, therefore I ask, therefore I think, therefore I am. The other thing I was watching Kirk back there, Kirk Schneider, at breakfast this morning, and he was so completely present to the person at the table. I mean, he's just leaning in the whole time. And that I tend to respond that way, Kirk. That's kind of the way I'm present, but I'm wondering if it's an American trait. Because I think, in a way, there's another way to be present, which is to sit back and make space for people to appear, so they don't have to react to our intense presence. I'm not going to give up my intense presence, but nevertheless, the last thing is, a lot of this is fundamentally apophatic thinking. Apophatic thinking begins with what we don't know. Cataphatic thinking asserts what we do know. But apophatic thinking begins with what we don't know and affirms the mystery of what we don't know, to come back to Paulo's. Thank you for the reminder by Paulo. So I think we're going to have to move on here, and with pleasure, and thank you very much for coming. I'm really happy to see you all. I should say thank you for being present.
I have to present Claire, yes, that your presentation is Can Wisdom Be Taught? It's a very difficult question. Claire is a psychologist, existential psychologist. You are very interested in motherhood, yes? Motherhood, yes? Okay. And you are the vice chair of federation? Chair-elect of the Federation of Existential Therapy in Europe. Please. Okay.
I have a PowerPoint, but how do I click them over?
They click. Questi non mi sembrano male.
Does it work?
Via.
This? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Right, thank you, Gianfranco, and thank you, everyone. I was really inspired by the title of this conference about wisdom, and that got me thinking about this whole idea about whether we can teach, whether wisdom can be taught. And as training providers, and I'm kind of talking in my capacity as principal of NSPC and also, being involved in existential training for many years, thinking, are we in the business of teaching wisdom? And so I guess I want to just present some ideas about that I've had, and hopefully this will kind of, get you thinking about wisdom in general for the rest of the conference. I'm not quite sure which button to press. The name is brilliant. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is just a little bit about me. So I've been in kind of working it out over 10 years of working in existential training. I had, even when I took an extended maternity break to look after my children when they were young, I was still teaching an introduction workshop in existential therapy during that time. I've also been working as an existential psychotherapist, a counselling psychologist, and as Gianfranco said, I specialise in working with mothers. So when I was thinking about wisdom, I thought, well, we probably need to have a little idea about what other people have said about wisdom and what their definitions are. So I looked at Jonkers, who is a philosopher in Amsterdam, and he said that there are 3 components to wisdom. So the first is about encompassing theoretical and practical knowledge, which orientates people in the search for the good life. So really kind of focusing on this idea of knowledge. And also kind of thinking about an idea of kind of bringing in this probably more so kind of like a Socratic idea around the good life. Although I have a little bit of a problem with that because I kind of almost feel like the good life is this sort of utopian place which is hard to achieve, and I much prefer Emma's ideas about finding better ways of living rather than trying to, kind of go for this idealistic place. Second part is that we are able to relate this insight in a meaningful way to the particular existential situations of concrete individuals or societies. So there's very much, wisdom is around being able to engage with these existential tensions, issues that are part of everyday living. But as we know from Heidegger's work, we often try to avoid them because sometimes they are too anxiety-provoking. And then the third part is that he's saying a wise person is someone who not only has wisdom, but also uses and lives it. So there's something about the application. It's not just about having knowledge. It's not just about being able to relate to existential givens. There's also something about applying it. So I also looked at Robert Sternberg's idea of the balance theories, and he brings in some other ideas around wisdom, which also seem to be quite important. He defines it as the use of one's intelligence, creativity, common sense, and knowledge, and is mediated by positive ethical values. So I've highlighted that because I kind of feel that these are kind of key points, towards the achievement of a common good, through a balance among intrapersonal, interpersonal, and extrapersonal interests over the short and long terms to achieve a balance among A, adaptation to existing environments, B, shaping of existing environments, and C, selection of new environments. So again, he's bringing in something around ethics, which I think is really important in terms of wisdom, and also this idea of a common good. So we're not just looking at it in terms of wisdom for ourselves, but also how we can use wisdom for other people, and in terms of how we can shape environments around us. And Walsh, I really liked Walsh's paper when he considered what is wisdom. And again, he brought out some common features of the definitions, which is a pro-social attitude and behavior, social decision-making, pragmatic knowledge of life, reflection or self-understanding, value, relativism and tolerance, recognition of and effectiveness of uncertainty and ambiguity, perspicacity, and emotional homeostasis. So these are all really interesting ideas, and how different people have kind of focused on different elements of what wisdom might be. So Walsh kind of sums this up and said that wisdom is deep, accurate insight and understanding of oneself and the central existential issues of life, plus skillful, benevolent responsiveness. So again, kind of bringing in this idea about how we engage with existential issues and existential givens, but also about ourselves. So when I kind of think about bringing this back to training, and one of the questions that I always ask our applicants when they come to our courses is like, why do you want to train as an existential therapist? And invariably, we get the same answers. It makes sense to me. So this is about existential philosophy. It's similar to how I think about life. The approach matches my values. It resonates with me and my reflections on life. I am drawn to existential questions. I like the non-pathologizing and open-mindedness of the approach. So there's something which I also resonate, because I think when I started working at Regent's College back in the early 90s with Emmy, and I came across, even though I'd done a psychology degree, came across the existential approach, it suddenly made sense. You know, I didn't connect with psychoanalysis, but suddenly the existential approach, which is all about asking questions, it suddenly felt, here were other people who had the same thoughts as I did, the same kind of questions. So when we think about existential psychotherapy training, it looks like it could be the perfect recipe for wisdom. You know, so we've got psychotherapy, which is very much around how we relate to other people, how we connect to other people. We have psychology, which is how we understand ourselves and our lives and other people. We have philosophy, which obviously in Greek means the level of wisdom, is about how we understand life and existence. So really altogether, that should lead. Cherry on the top of the cake. Sorry, I couldn't find a picture of a cake with a cherry on the top. So, we should be able to get wisdom, shouldn't we? But what I've learned over the years is that that doesn't always happen. So we might be able to teach the students the same things, have the same materials, but actually what comes out of it can be very different. So there might be some students who are really keen to just get through the program as quickly as possible. They see it kind of a little bit on the surface. It's like almost like a tick box exercise. There are other people who work very diligently. They come out as good therapists, but there's not quite, wouldn't necessarily say that they had attained wisdom. And then you have students, and I think the struggle bit is the bit that I really want to pick up, is that they've struggled. And let's face it, existential philosophy is a struggle, isn't it, to understand. So it's about that kind of like really immersing yourself in the philosophy, really struggling, really putting yourself in. And those students, when they graduate, I think, actually they've attained something that we might call wisdom. So kind of going back to the philosophers, surprisingly, they all seem to say the same thing, which is not always the case with philosophers. So we've got Aristotle, who says, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Socrates says something similar. Wonder is the beginning of wisdom. So both of them are talking about that this isn't necessarily about something external that we learn, but it comes from inside. And also they're talking about the beginning, not when we have become wise, but what is the path to wisdom. And I think it made me think about Heidegger's idea of authenticity, that we have moments of authenticity, and maybe we have moments of wisdom as well. So it feels like the philosophers are saying that wisdom is a state of mind. So Socrates goes on to say, only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Tolstoy says the same thing. We can know only that we know nothing, and that is the highest degree of human wisdom. And Confucius says, he who knows all the answers has not been asked all the questions. So again, it's very much around thinking about not necessarily what we know, but being aware of there is more to know, and that what we know is only a small part of that. I had a really interesting experience with my daughter when she was little, and she asked me, Mummy, do you know everything I know? And I said, well, I know some of what you know, but there is a lot more that you know that I will never know. And I think, there she is, a budding existential philosopher already. So can we teach wisdom? So it kind of feels like if it comes from what we don't know, is it something that we can teach? So again, Einstein says wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. Proust says we don't receive wisdom, we must discover it for ourselves after a journey that no one can take for us or spare us. So again, it kind of feels like maybe we can't teach wisdom. Confucius says there are 3 methods by we may learn wisdom. The first is by reflection, which is the noblest. Second, by imitation, which is the easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest. So when I'm thinking about what are we asking our students to learn, the first thing I say to my students when they are in the induction on the program is that they have to live the philosophy. You know, existential philosophy was not written for psychotherapy. We have to kind of translate it. We have to work out how to apply it. And so I say, you start with yourself first. Try to apply this philosophy to yourself, and then you can work out how you can apply it to other people. So I think probably in those first weeks, they probably don't think how they can possibly do that. But it's very much around trying to take that philosophy on board for themselves and really kind of, you know, how does that relate to me? How does that relate to how I think about the world? How does that relate to, you know, how I relate to things and other people? And actually, you know, Simone de Beauvoir, oh, I've got a spelling error there, sorry, suddenly realized that she was talking about how existentialism is a practical philosophy. Both her and Sartre really wanted existential ideas to get out into the general public. You know, they wrote plays and novels rather than just philosophical tomes. And so Simone says, existentialism also claims to be a practical and living attitude towards the problems posed today. It is a philosophy, yet does not want to stay enclosed in books and schools. It intends to revive the great tradition of ancient wisdom. So there's something about that applicability of existential ideas into our everyday living. So quite a lot of the initial definitions looked about how wisdom comes to addressing the central existential issues of life, which is obviously part of what we might do as a training institute. Walsh goes on to say, life is endlessly mysterious, knowledge is never complete, and the future is largely unpredictable. So we're in this kind of mysterious way where we're completely confronted by existential issues. And how we deal with those, or how we rise to the challenge of those, is through defenseless openness, an attitude of courage, authenticity, and resoluteness. So there's also something about how we gain wisdom through the lessons life tells us. And one of the other things that we might do with our students when they're coming on is that we might want to find out about, you know, what are the difficult things that they've had to deal with in their lives? What challenges have they had to face? And what have they learnt from that? You know, and it's really important that it's not just kind of being caught up in the experience, but also the learning. So wisdom is learnt through the lessons of life, and what you learn about yourself, and how you overcome adversity. And I like Emma's ideas around, in her book, Rising from Existential Crisis. It is even more important not to let ourselves be defeated by this blow of fate, and rather take our changed destiny by the horns and make it our own. It is important to shake off our blues and rediscover our capacity for making something of the troubles visited on us. It is important to invite ourselves back into the dance of life and rediscover hope. So there's something really about that, you know, how do we face adversity, and how can we learn from that adversity to help us understand something about life and something about ourselves. And often when we talk to our clients, it's also about helping them to connect with, you know, that life has shown them something about how they cope in difficult situations, how they're able to overcome situations. And I think that's a really important lesson in life in general. So transformation can be brought by praxis. So again, this is Emmy saying praxis is defined as reflexive action or active reflection. So kind of going back to some of these earlier definitions, it's really thinking about this self-knowledge, and we can only know about ourselves by reflecting on ourselves. So I've got it here, Gibbs's reflexive cycle. So this is like, how do we kind of connect with ourselves? But also, it's not just about reflecting, it's also about, you know, really thinking about ourselves in a deep way, through therapy. And obviously, as a training, in our training programs, we expect our students to all have existential therapy as a way of really helping them to know about themselves and to get that real deep self-knowledge. And it's really important to kind of think about, how we question ourselves. And this is what Husserl was talking about in terms of phenomenology. Going back to the things themselves, we need to constantly be examining our own assumptions, belief and judgment systems. This is part of that self-knowledge. How are we making assumptions? How are we, not questioning ourselves? And then thinking carefully and critically about how our actions influence other people, not just necessarily in our own lives, but with our clients and also within in our research. So I thought when I was thinking about wisdom, we have obviously the wise old owl. And I was thinking, well, why is an owl wise? And I thought, well, actually, it's probably because he's got really big eyes and also able to turn their head. Now, I had to Google. Owls can't turn their head around 360 degrees, but they can turn their heads around 270 degrees. So they have a really good ability to look all the way around. And so that's, for me, I think something about wisdom, is being able to see these new perspectives. And of course, then that leads me into thinking about Gadamer and the concept of horizon. So it's important for us, if we're going to be thinking about how we can know more, is to really think about how we can move beyond our horizons and be open to the prospect that there's more to learn. There are different perspectives, there are different experiences that we might not even know about, and that are also possible. And in some ways, that's kind of what we're trying to do with our clients in our clinical work, isn't it? It's about trying to show them that there are other ways of thinking about their problems, there are other ways of thinking about their world, and we try to give them these new horizons. But we've got to do that for ourselves first, which is kind of going back to the living the philosophy, before we can ask our clients or our students to do that. So Gadamer says, the concept of horizon suggests itself because it expresses the superior breadth of vision that the person who is trying to understand must have. To acquire a horizon means that one learns to look beyond what is close at hand, not in order to look away from it, but to see it better. So there's something around kind of being able to see the world, our experiences in a better way when we're able to have that openness of our horizons. So another thing that I think, again, is really important, and going back to Simone de Beauvoir, and I think she really highlighted that in her book, The Ambiguity of Ethics, is that wise decisions are always ethical and moral ones. So we can't just make wise decisions for ourselves, we're making them for other people too. And I really like de Beauvoir's ideas around ethics, where she says only man can be an enemy of man. So it's like how we have an impact on other people. We can become other people's enemies. So we really need to think about our freedom and how we use that, and how we enact our lives and our relationships impact on another person. So ethical freedom is always needed, and I think is also an important part about wisdom. I love the Dalai Lama's quote here saying that wisdom and compassion are always together, like the two wings of a bird or the two wheels of a cart. For the bird cannot fly and the cart cannot roll with only one. So wisdom always has to have this element of compassion, which kind of ties in with ethical freedom. So again, in the induction sessions with my new students, I say, this course is going to change your life. And it's a developmental process. I say, don't look at what other people are doing in the course. All of you are coming to the course from your own journeys, with your own background and your own experience. And this journey to become a therapist is individual. It's something that you have to, you are becoming an existential therapist. This is not just learning, a philosophy degree and that you just learn it and then you write your dissertation and you're finished. Something has to change. You have to be changed to become an existential therapist. So there is a developmental element, and I think there is something around that in terms of wisdom as well. It doesn't mean that you're having a mature insight means that you're old, although often that does come into play. But there is something around maturity that sometimes, young people have had quite challenging lives, and obviously there is some insight that they've learned from that. There's also wisdom through sitting with people in pain, and I think this is something that Emmy and I tried to pick up in our new book on structural existential analysis, that we learn, as therapists, we learn about life and about other people and about struggle and about existence through being with other people who have suffered. And there's a great kind of learning that we do as part of that process. And so there's an element, I think, that Walsh was talking about of practical wisdom in reducing suffering and enhancing well-being, not just for ourselves, but also for other people. So that kind of comes in. So what I'm thinking about is just kind of as a signpost of how to become more wisdom, how to become more wise. Here are some signposts. So Kaplan was talking about that you need to find a guide, an authentic teacher. So there's something about that maybe you can't do this on your own. Maybe there's something that you need to be guided to become more wise. To live the philosophy, existential philosophy, and think deeply about existence and central existential ideas. So there's something really important about this engagement with the philosophy. Learn life's lessons through adversity and difficulty, both your own and listening to other people's. Life can teach us a lot, and we can either go down and under, or we can find a way of going through and coming out of adversity. Use reflection, reflexivity, and therapy to gain deep self-knowledge. Wisdom comes from the self, so we really need to learn about ourselves and really need to challenge ourselves and our assumptions and biases continually. We need to expand our horizons, seek new perspectives and other ways of looking at things, and engage in ethical freedom, awareness of our own impact on others, and being benevolent and kind to people, and allowing ourselves to be changed in the process, and really thinking about this idea of an existential view of self where we're dynamic and we're constantly changing, to embrace that change, looking for it. Question, wonder, and be curious, always. So there's kind of always having questions, not necessarily finding the answers, and this is something that I kind of loved so much about existential philosophy when I first kind of started to know about it. It's like, we don't have to find the answers, that's okay, we can just stick with the questions, and the more questions there are, the better in some ways. So, achieving wisdom. You may never know you have attained it. So, it kind of almost feels like wisdom is often bestowed on us by other people. We don't necessarily know that we are wise ourselves. And if we do feel that we're wise ourselves, then we probably need to question ourselves a bit more. And that's the end. So thank you very much. Oh, time for questions, Gianfranco is saying. Yeah.
Well, thank Claire. Okay, now we stop and restart at 2:05. Okay, here. Buon appetito, si dice in italiano.